It's a great privilege for me to be able to do this introduction, and I'm really pleased Gulkula is here for it. I'd like to welcome up some really special guests who've come a very long way to be here, and they're carrying some messages, and I imagine they'll be taking some messages back to their homelands. If I could welcome up Sundance Chief Rueban George from the Tsleil-Waututh Nation in Vancouver. Rueban.
ACM, HCM, CIA, Chief Glutstans, not to Tsleil-Waututh, Chief Yopanans, not to Tsleil-Waututh Squamish. I'm really thankful for being here. You know, it's evident in the we were also in New Zealand last week with my youth, and they kept on saying, it feels like home. And then they come here and the same thing's happening. They feel so comfortable, it's like home. To me, what they identify with is the traditional landowners of the land and their relationship with the land. What's essentially our ways of our culture and our spirituality, which in turn are the laws of our governance. And there's a reciprocal relationship that I see with Indigenous people here like we do at home. Like I use my children as an example. When they lived in Seattle with mother and I lived in Vancouver, and I'd get in my car and I'd start to drive there and I'm already happy. That's a reciprocal relationship between the love they have for the Father and I have for them that has synergy between it. And that's like a ceremony. And I had the pleasure to pray with people in Brazil and Panama, the Sami natives in France, all over the world. I had really beautiful opportunities to pray with people like we did here with the Indigenous people here. And it's always, when we look closer at each other's cultures, there's more similarities than differences. All the ceremonies that I've seen, there's always fire, earth, water, and sky. I've been to churches where they use candles or incense. You know, we use fires for sage, sweetgrass, or tobacco. But using those elements starts to create and starts to understand a spiritual connection to the lands and to the waters. And I think that's what we all feel when we come here, when I say that we feel like we're at home. It's a reciprocal relationship that I've been talking about the last couple of days with the Indigenous people that are here that create a connection to the land and create a connection to the water. And because that's happening, we continue to feel that and experience that, and that's why my kids feel like it's at home. So what I'm talking about is the foundation of my people and our laws and how we use them and how we work with them. There's a project that, you know, I'm a family therapist, but I haven't practiced for about 7 years. I've been working on a project to stop one of the biggest disastrous oil companies in the world. It's called Kinder Morgan, but the size of earth that they want to move in Alberta is the same size as France. It takes 2 tons of earth, the size of my truck, to get 1 barrel about this big and 3.5 barrels of water. It takes so much water that the aquifer that they're taking out of supplies 20% of Canada's water. But they took so much out that, you know, everything got so dry and a big disaster happened that the city that was there hosts about 100,000 people, that all the houses and buildings burnt down, about 90% of it. They made the water so dry in the last 3 years, and I read that study about 3 years ago that would happen, and it was really sad. But what we get out of the water and we get out of the land is good. We did a study that was based out of our culture and our spirituality. And there's some things that our elders wanted to look at because of the reciprocal relationship, that our study said things that we already knew. 90% of our food, 85% of our food came out of the water that we live at. That's the water right around Vancouver, British Columbia. So essentially everything that we get out of the water is good. When you see the water here, our water, when the tide goes out, it'd go about 200, 300 yards. when the tide went out, the table was set. We'd walk up there and pick up big Dungeness crab and oysters and clams, and it was a big meal. But I had year-round salmon, and it had seal and whale and all these abundant things of life that fed us. If you could put a monetary value back then, 500 years ago, how we lived very rich. And if you could put a monetary value on something, it would be the food. And it makes me think this way, that we had a canoe that we'd make out of a log with hand tools. I found this mull, it's a hammer, and I put a compass on it, and it was perfectly symmetrical. This hammer, you would trade 7 canoes for. And I thought, it was perfectly symmetrical, and it's made out of rocks and stones, and it was made so perfect and so beautiful. I thought, wow, look at the leisure time that you would have to create something like that. So our farming techniques were second to none as well. That, again, we're living abundant. That we had enough time to put into making a perfect mull made out of stone, carved by stone, that you'd trade 7 canoes for. So we lived rich. When we lived that way, we always made sure that we gave back and protected what we had and enhanced it. Just like we're doing now today. I have a copy of our strategic plan here that is cleaning the Burrard Inlet with some partners. You know, I haven't eaten out of there the clam or crab or oysters for 30 years. The first time in 30 years, because my people are cleaning the water, we're going to have a clam harvest. And the same with our salmon. Our salmon is so abundant. In my short lifetime, when I was a kid, there's little streams this deep where you'd have salmon this big swimming in it and going up to spawn. It was so beautiful. You wouldn't need a fishing line or anything like that. I'd literally stand there and I'd pick one up. That's how it was. And now it's not like that. Our main river went down to 6,000 salmon 10 years ago. And again, my people started cleaning it up. The Canadian fisheries gave that responsibility to my people, and as soon as they did that, they started seeing a big difference. I was up at that river a year ago, 10 years later, after our salmon count went down to 6,000, and it was so beautiful to see, like when I was a kid. And our elders would say, I want our children to experience what we experienced, because right now they're not. So I went up there and I took my son. We talked to some of our staff. They counted 1.6 million salmon in one day. They brought that salmon count up to over 10 million salmon in 10 years. Such a beautiful, beautiful work. And it's the same with our elk. The elk have been non-existent in our territory for about 100 years. But we put, again, some 37 Roosevelt elk up in that traditional territory. And it amazed us what happened. Because the elk came back, brought back wolves. It's bringing back the grizzly bears. It's even bringing back singing birds and flowers. It's completing that ecosystem that was missing. And those things that are important to us. So if we're making these efforts to make something better, we're going to make sure that things coming in aren't going to harm what we have. In Alberta tar sands, they cause a lot of destruction, so we said you can't come in. So what they did is they put their application into the National Energy Board, which is what is the government, the agency put forward by the Canadian government to approve or disapprove of oil pipelines, but they never disapprove them. And of course, they said that they're going to go ahead with this pipeline, so we're suing Canada. And how we're suing Canada is much of what I'm talking about is with our Indigenous rights. Things that we've been living by for thousands of years, and that's the laws of our lands and our waters and the laws of our culture and our spirituality, what created our governance. Just like we follow the laws of our lands to protect, to enhance what we have, we follow those teachings to make sure that we create what we have and protect what we have and help what we have. So Canada, they thought they consulted us by letting us have a 40-minute presentation to the National Energy Board to tell our side about what happens. But they failed at that. And like I said, we know what's wrong. We see what's wrong. But what we had to do is create our own assessment, which was based on our culture and our spirituality, which turned out to be a 1,200-page document that we worked with 6 world-renowned scientists saying, and then they came out and said, well, we already know that it wasn't good. We already knew that. So we created this, but What we believe in, and Kinder Morgan would phone us and say, we need to talk, we need to talk, we need to negotiate. And this is what's crazy. They're offering about $250 million per nation. There's 80 nations along the pipeline to settle with these oil companies. And the majority of them are saying no. And I'm not kidding you. Like, we still have some of our own people in poverty. You know, we're only 3% of Canada's population, but we're 40% of the jail population. We're 50% of school dropout. We're 40% of homelessness. The Minister of Environment, Oliver, he said, why don't the First Nations take it? They need it. Maybe he's right, but we didn't need it more than our land, and that's the choice we made in a referendum with our community was much like this. So we said no. And because what we're using for a crutch to help our people out of that genocide that happened, or personally, my nation from 15,000 strong a couple hundred years ago was wiped out to 13 people. Now we're about 500. But what we used as a crutch to pick ourselves up was the land. So that's why we said no, and we chose to protect. So the National Energy Board said, come on and give your presentation for 40 minutes. And Kinder Morgan is saying, let's negotiate. Both of those, well, we would negotiate with a company because we're a nation. We told Canada they have to talk to us. They have to negotiate with us. They have to settle that. And we ignored Kinder Morgan, but we went to the National Energy Board and we gave a presentation where we just told our legends. That message was to, back then, Stephen Harper, who was much like George Bush, but he's actually smart. And and he's pretty good at. Anyway, I won't go there. And I'm trying to be resistant at calling Trudeau a Harper Jr., but I won't say that too. But anyway, we couldn't in 40 minutes explain a 1,200-page document of our assessment of Kinder Morgan, and they wouldn't allow us to do that, so we're suing them. And I'm really happy about that because the Canadian Constitution, unlike with our relations here where I see the difficulties and I keep knocking my head on how we could try to help, but the Canadian Constitution protects our Indigenous rights. To this point, First Nations are winning 90% of our court battles against resource extraction. In the last few years, we have won 170 legal cases against resource extractions. The tides have finally changed. The Indigenous people have our power and we have our rights. They couldn't suppress us. They couldn't hold us down. They put us in residential schools. They killed our people off. They took our language, our culture, and our spirituality, and they outlawed it, and they made it against law for us to practice what we do and how we govern it and how we create ourselves. They couldn't stop that, though. And the tides have changed. Industry can't do anything in British Columbia now without talking to First Nations. And I'm really happy to say that the Canadian community, our Canadian citizens, support what we do. Properly educated people who know the true facts of the destruction that this causes vote in favor of us. There was a survey done that 71% of local residents support the Tsleil-Waututh Nation and sue in Canada for not consulting us. So we're winning the moral value battle too with the public, that we're sharing these things that happen and what's going on. But we don't compromise. We don't change who we are in our ceremonies. You know, my chief went out this morning with some of the elders to gather some leaves that they're going to, because my chief and my cousins, they do basket weaving. And they do all sorts of weaving, and that's what they do too, so they really resonated with one another. But in those ceremonies, we don't compromise. So in life, I'm taught to too. Doing family therapy for 14 years, my grandfather said, anything you learn in college and university about healing, there's a native teaching that says the same thing. I put that to the test and won a grant, and I hired 2 psychologists and about 10 elders, and we looked at any successful psychological healing program that was helping Indigenous people, and we took it and we translated it to our own legends and stories. And the same thing we did in this environment. We didn't change who we are, and we did the same approach with our culture and our spirituality, and that's what we do with economic development. So we have these unwritten policies that Tsleil-Waututh lives by that helped us through those hard times when we were going through residential schools, when the government were suppressing our people. We still stuck by quietly and did our songs and our dances, even though that was against the law. A lot of our people went to jail just for singing the songs and dances. But we fought through that, like we fought through this. And I believe in the power of prayer. I believe in the reciprocal relationship to the lands and to the waters like the indigenous people here have. I'm so proud of them for hosting this. I call you my people. I call you my relations, the indigenous people here. Our histories are so similar of the oppressive government and what they try to do, but how you persevered and how you continue to stand strong, how you continue to lead with your culture and your spirituality, how you host us so beautifully. Such a proud moment to be here and to witness part of what was going on here. I'm so happy for that. They're my people, my First Nation people. We come here to stand with you in solidarity in any decision that you make. Any decision in the partnerships that you have, we stand with you. We know you're making choices for your future generations, and we respect that. We respect the direction that you're going in, and we come here with nothing but love. We want to share a little bit of our culture and a little bit of who we are, but we're here to learn. This is something here that my youth have really resonated with, and I'm really proud of. And I'm really happy to be here. And my spirit's full. I'm fed. In ceremony, sometimes we fast. We're not feeding our body with food or water. We're in a fast. But when we pray, we're feeding our spirit with the goodness of the fundamentals of any religious or spiritual belief. Love is so powerful. Respect, honor, dignity, pride, compassion, understanding, truth, knowledge, wisdom. Those things are the fundamentals of what it is to be a human being. And that's why we're here to share with each and every one of you is those guiding principles and of humanity and pray that we can incorporate those values into our life, into our everyday life. What I'm taught is ceremony isn't something that we just do for a couple hours a week. It's a lifestyle that we follow. And I thank the people for doing that, for fighting through it. Those songs are so beautiful. Those dances are so beautiful. The paint that you wear is something that's similar that we do too. We wear red and black paint, similar to how you wear that, and I understand that. I understand some of what you're doing, and it's so beautiful. But I'm thankful. I'm thankful for that, and I'm thankful for each and every one of you. We're going to be here all weekend. If you have any questions, I encourage you to come ask us, and I'm going to call up some of my family, and we want to share a song with you. Tsleil-Waututh! This celebration song, because we feel so good, and we want to thank our hosts for bringing us. Tsleil-Waututh!